Hey, stepmamas, welcome to the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast. This is your go to space for unapologetic, unfiltered conversations about the roller coaster ride of stepmotherhood. We're your hosts. I'm Adrienne.
And I'm Amelia. We understand that being a stepmom is like walking a tightrope in stilettos. So we're here to help you embrace the messiness, laugh through the craziness, and find strength in our shared experiences.
This podcast is more than just a series of episodes, it's a community for stepmoms to be real, raw, and unfiltered. Buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey of candid conversations, taboo topics, and expert insights.
This is the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast, your sanctuary for real talk and real solutions.
Hey, welcome back to the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast. How are you, Amelia?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to dive into today's topic.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good one. Another much needed conversation for stepmoms.
Yeah, I know it's something we spend a lot of time talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and that's communication and how we handle it. So, um, what's your approach to communicating with your husband about co-parenting or just anything within your stepfamily dynamics?
Yeah, well, first I'll tell you what my communication used to be, um, which was I'll call it like an attack mode. When something would come up, um, I often just went in attack mode at him and maybe accusatory or I'm not sure of the right word, but my approach to that that type of communication always led to arguments and him misunderstanding what I was trying to say because of the approach I was taking. Um,
Mhm.
you know, um, and so a lot of things just didn't get resolved. Like in our earlier years, a lot of things ended up being just swept under the rug, until the next time,
Yeah.
and then something blows up that's really irrelevant, but then this, past issue gets brought into it because, both of us just were not able to communicate. So I will say now, many years in, yeah, I spend time processing what is going on first. So whereas I initially, right away, we must talk about this right away.
Mhm.
Must be solved. If there's an issue, it must be solved today. And that's what they always kind of tell you, like marriage counseling and things like that. Like, never go to bed angry. And I used to really like take that to heart and like, you know, and live by that. Like, we must solve this today. Um, and like sometimes I have to disagree with that and say, like, sometimes it's okay to go to bed angry. It's okay to go to bed and not have resolved something. It's okay to go to bed thinking about how you want to approach the issue, right?
Right. Sometimes it's
Um,
actually more productive because you need the separation and the
Absolutely.
time to process and maybe put some things in
Yes.
perspective.
Yes. That's the
Mhm.
thing. And in doing that over the years, I've learned that, like, an issue arises and right away I might have a, response to it, right? Like, I can feel my blood pressure going up, I can feel my face is getting flushed, all the things, but taking some time to think through it and how do I want to approach it, and, depending on the conflict, like, how is it affecting me? How is it affecting my kids? How does it affect the family? Um, a lot of times when I've taken the time to think over all of those things, it's like, not quite often, but maybe like 50% of the time, it's like, actually, you know what? I've got other things to worry about. Like, I don't, this isn't really an issue to me, and I'm going to
Right.
move on. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Is this really the battle you want to fight, or is
y-
this a reaction that once you process it, you go, "Oh, yeah,
oh,
maybe I don't care as much as I thought I did." Or maybe it's not as
right.
important. It's not that you don't care, but it's just not as important to fight that battle. It's not the hill you're going to die on. Um,
Right. Like, I think we've said it recently, and if we haven't, I'm sure you'll hear us say it again. Like, there's literally something to be upset about in a step family all the time. Like there's
Right.
always things that come up. And so yeah, for me, all these years in, I've just kind of decided, when I do take the time to think through things, a lot of times it's like, yeah, not going to worry about that one. Like there'll be bigger
Right.
things to worry about. Like I'll save my energy.
Right.
Um
Yeah. I know
yeah.
something that you and I have talked about is not just the importance of communication, but our communication styles and how
Mhm.
we approach it, right? It's really important not to assume the worst in our partners. And
Yeah.
I think we both have learned over the years, many, many
Mhm.
years, that a lot of times our our spouses were trying to protect us in situations, and
Yes.
we didn't see it that way,
No.
and we laugh about it today because we could name a number of very dramatic situations,
Yeah.
um, but really, I think most of the time, both partners are trying to protect the other person, their feelings, making sure they're not caught up in drama, all of the things, while also trying to protect their whole family and the kids involved. And
Yeah.
it can come off, we can get defensive because it can come off as if they're hiding information. They're not telling us everything, they're not
Mhm.
updating us. And those are all reasons that we feel backed into a corner. And then that's when we go into that attack mode, and we want things our way, or we want to
Well,
know what's happening.
but that plays into the insecurity piece of,
Right.
feeling insecure meant that I needed to be in the know about all the things all of the time because I was just so insecure about who I was and the ex-wife and all the things, right? So that did drive my reactions and the way I communicated and all of that. When, yeah, like you said, our husbands oftentimes were just trying to protect us from, things that we just didn't need to see or hear, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Or how many times, did we think we needed to see or know something, or we would justify it by,
mhm.
like, well, I do this for the kids, or I do this, so I need to know. And yeah, I
Yeah,
just think that, like you said, it's really important to protect your peace first and foremost, and
yeah.
to really think through, what is this really about? How crucial is
Mhm.
it that I'm really involved? And and then when I do communicate, how am I going to communicate with my partner about how I feel about something?
And that's the thing. I mean, you might take some time to think about whatever the issue is, and you might decide, yeah, this is something that we need to talk about. And so, how do I approach that? And, you know, for me, anyways, and what I've taught clients in the past is look at it like a business meeting, right? So, number one, make sure that you don't have any outside, like, things going on. Obviously, you don't want the kids around for, important adult conversations. Um, Give yourself time, like, don't try and have a conversation on the fly as your husband's walking out the door to work. Be like, "Actually, we need to talk," "That's not fair to him or to you." So make sure that you have the time to have the conversation, and when you do have that conversation, stick to that topic. Don't it's easy to go off the rails, especially when you're, feeling really emotional and, the conversation can get heated, but stick to the point because veering off and starting to get accusatory and things like that they're going to completely shut down and they're not going to hear anything that you're saying and your conversation will go nowhere. So, yeah, try and just stick to what that topic is about, and then look to resolve or communicate or not even resolve. Sometimes we don't come to a resolution right away, and that's okay.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and the other thing is like my husband years ago, well, he still does if I try sometimes. His he does need time to process. And so he when I used to something would come up and I'd be like, "We must talk about this right now." And he would just be like, "I'm going outside. I'm going to the garage." And I viewed that as like he's walking away from me. How dare he walk away when I have this issue? But now, like, being this many years in, I realize, like, he is a person who has always known, like, I need to process through this before I can have a rational conversation with my wife who's feeling a little bit, extra right now.
Who might not be so rational at the
Yeah,
moment.
right. So,
Yeah.
like, Yeah, I think sometimes there's such a benefit to being able to, like, step back and look at someone else's perspective of the situation. Um, and giving people time and space doesn't mean that, like, you're forgetting about it or, you
Right.
know,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. I think your
yeah.
point about sticking to one topic is important, um, not just so you don't go off the rails and go down these rabbit holes, but also I think at least what I have found is that things compound, right? They pile on. It's normally whatever that one issue is has happened more than one time. And
Mhm.
I don't know, I'll speak for myself. I'd say this is probably pretty common for a lot of women, but maybe not. So I'll just speak for myself and say that when it happens multiple times and over again, for me, it's not actually just that one issue anymore. It's the constant recurring issue. And
Yeah.
then I dig in and I latch on to the, well, this has been 5 years or this has been eight
Mhm.
years of, blah, 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 whatever it is.
Mhm.
And that's not healthy either, right? If we say that we've resolved something, we have to move on from it. We have to,
Right.
if we've truly resolved it, then we need to accept whatever the outcome is and move forward and trust that our partners or whoever we're speaking to have the best of intentions and believe the best in them, which it really makes a huge difference when people see that you believe the best in them versus feeling
Mhm.
attacked all the time. Then their responses to you are quite different.
That is that is so true. My husband always used to say to me, like, why can't you just believe what I'm saying? Or, when I would say,
Yeah.
like, well, you didn't tell me about this conversation or this text message or, you know, and I was always accusing him of really, I don't even know what, just that I always felt in the dark, which is a topic for another day. But once I started putting that faith in him, yeah, the responses to me were a lot different.
Right.
So yeah, that's true. Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like communication is one of those topics that we could spend endless hours talking
Mhm.
about because it's so critical to the success of step families. It's critical to any relationship being
Yeah,
successful, honestly.
yeah, yeah.
And it's not just that the communication is happening, but it's how it's happening and and how we respond to it that I think makes a huge difference and takes time to learn. Unfortunately, it's not something that's taught in our school systems. It would be great if it was, but
No.
it's not. And so I find that most adults have to learn it. I mean, that was the case for both of us, right? So it's
Well, and that's the thing, like, you emulate what you see in your home, right? Like, how did your parents communicate? How did they deal with conflict? And to be honest, I witnessed my mom and stepdad and their communication styles and conflict resolution, and they're not always the healthiest. And I'm guilty of doing that as well, doing the old slamming of the cupboard sometimes when I don't like things or going silent,
that's what I was
which
just
I'm
gonna say. That was my big one, the silent treatment.
yeah, the silent
Oh,
treatment.
mom's
Yeah.
mad, she's storming around the house, she's cleaning
Yes, the
endlessly.
cleaning. Yes, the rage cleaning.
Yes.
Everybody look out, I'm washing the floors.
But you're right,
Um,
it we learn from what we watch and experience as
mhm.
children, just as our children are learning from watching and experiencing the homes that we provide, um, and it is important that, if when you know better, do better. That's what I say. So, we may have learned one thing, but as adults, we have the right to learn a different way and to improve upon it.
Yeah, and just to your point about our kids watching, that is why in our house, we obviously kid-friendly conversations, nothing that is, things that they shouldn't be hearing about. Um, but we will if we do have a disagreement about something, like, we will let them see us talking it through and even apologizing to one another. That's another big thing, right? Like, if I am in the wrong, which sometimes can happen.
Are you sure? I don't know.
I mean, it's very, very rare.
My husband
Um,
jokes about that. Like, "Can I get that recorded so I can play it back? Because this doesn't happen."
well, now it's recorded, so
There we go, for
for
both of
my
us.
husband anyway. Um, no, but we do let our kids see that because
Yeah.
I am now aware. I'm so aware of how our communication and conflict resolution does affect our kids and seeing, like, our girls are already teenagers, which ugh. And to think in just a few years, like they're going to be out into the world and probably dabbling in relationships and ugh. Um, I want them to have those skills to be able to communicate properly, and not slam cupboards and go rage cleaning or shopping or.
It is an effective way to get my house clean, but
It is, yes, it's
not
quite.
healthy. It's interesting. You raised the point about communication skills, and that's
Mhm.
just it. It is a skill set. That means that it can be taught, it can be learned, you can develop it. It's like the muscles in our body, right? If you work them, they get
Yeah.
stronger, and it's the same thing with communication skills. And so, really encourage people to take the time to look at their communication styles and to have a conversation with their partner or with the co-parents or whoever's involved about communication styles and understanding one another. A
Mhm.
lot can go wrong just around communication. And when you break it down and you get to the core issues, a lot of times, I mean, in our own family, we found that it's like, oh, that was just a misunderstanding because you said this, but I heard this. And if we had just stood here and talked a little bit longer to really understand one another's perspectives, then
Mhm.
we probably wouldn't have had this big blow up over something so small. And we can
Yeah.
resolve it together. So, communication is a skill set. It can be learned and it can be developed and strengthened over
Mhm.
time if you're putting the work in. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just reminded me of not even a step family issue, but just a communication issue within families and how text messages, and we all know this, text messages can be misread. I don't like your tone in this message type thing. They put a period at the end. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Um, which is why I really prefer like face-to-face conversations or over the phone at the very least. I know that's not possible for all step family situations. I know there is, very high conflict that, doesn't even allow for text messaging. Um, but I think, if face-to-face or over the phone conversation is possible, like with the co-parent, I would definitely strive for that just because, like you said, things just get misinterpreted and could have so easily been avoided had you just understood where one another were coming from or had a little bit more, um what's the word not backstory, but like,
Yeah. I think understanding of
yeah,
more
like it's
detail, more context
more
to,
context, which is easier to do over the phone or in person than,
Mhm.
a whole, short
Right.
story through a text message.
Right.
Um, yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some things that you can text. There's other things that you should have a conversation. Um, and again, I think some of this is perspective, right? Are you reading it, wanting to see the worst in somebody?
Mhm.
Guilty.
Yeah.
It happens, right? You get
Yeah.
angry, you get
We're
upset.
human.
Right.
Mhm.
Or are you reading it going, okay, I want to see the best. I want to make this work. Um,
Right.
you know, so yeah, lots of good tips on communication. Um,
Yeah.
if we could give our listeners one key takeaway, what would you say that is for you, Amelia?
I definitely would tell people, like, it's okay to go to bed angry. It's okay to think about whatever issue you're facing today. It's okay to put some time into thinking about it before you approach having a conversation with your partner, um, or even the co-parent or the ex, whatever. Um, think
Yeah.
about it first. You don't need to resolve the issue right when it happens, and that was one of my biggest faults in my earlier years because, like I said, always taught, things need to be resolved right away. Don't go to bed angry, and I just think that's not always great advice. So yeah, my advice is take some time.
Your advice is don't take the standard advice.
Don't take the advice. No. No, I
I love that.
no.
Uh, yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think for me, it's what we were just touching on. It's that communication is a skill and you have to work at it. These things don't come naturally and they don't happen overnight. And every day's a new day and you get to wake up and
Mhm.
have a fresh start. And so if yesterday wasn't good and you weren't proud of how you communicated an issue or how things were left, you get to start over. You get a clean slate, and you have to
Mhm.
choose to look at it that way and choose to do different if what you were doing isn't working. Um, and you only get better at communication by communicating. So go communicate.
Yeah, yeah. Go have a chat.
Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, we hope this conversation has been helpful and you have some great takeaways. If you have questions for us or things you'd like to hear us chat about, uh, drop in on Instagram and share a message with us at The Art of Blended Chaos, or pop over to our website at
Mhm.
theartofblendedchaos.com. Have a
Yeah.
great day.
All right. A quick disclaimer to cover our asses. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on today's episode are the speaker's own, so if you didn't like them, why didn't you turn us off sooner?
The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. If you need support with a specific topic, you can do so by booking a one-on-one coaching call through our website, theartofblendedchaos.com. This podcast is not intended to replace professional, legal, or medical advice. You seriously didn't think we were lawyers or doctors, did you?